Welcome to the Missing Men. I'm failing miserably on trying to get a consistent time frame to get with everybody. My apologies. But here I am, and tonight I want to talk about my childhood compared to today's kids. Before I go any further, please, everybody, understand, again, not perfect. I'm not the person that you want to mold your life around, nor am I sitting here saying that I have not made horrible mistakes as a father and as a man. I have. But what I want us to look at tonight, I want you to go back when you were a kid. I want you to think about what are some of the things that you remember that made you who you were? What are some of the things that just brought you such joy at 8 years of age or 10 years of age to help make you who you are? What's some of the things you did maybe for work that helped make you who you were? That's what I'm talking about tonight. One of the first things that came to my mind was a tree. Now, for anybody that just started scratching their head going, why are we talking about a tree? I promise you, a tree was practically a one-stop shop for me as a kid. I mean, a tree was my gym, it was my construction zone, and it was my entertainment. There wasn't any Nintendo for this fellow right here. I didn't have this, long, drawn out, big toys or anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I had toys. I did. I don't want somebody to say anything I did, because I did. But what I found to have fun, man, this fella right here would climb up in a tree to the point of absolutely, what are you doing? We used to have an American sycamore off behind our house. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with an American sycamore, mature height, easily 100 foot if it wants to. Now, that's very tip top, but they can get up there. Wait a minute, let me go back. Maybe not 100, 80. But we had one back there. I told myself one day, I'm gonna get as high up in it as I can. I got so high up in that tree that I was at the actual bending part of the main leader of the tree. I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm not condoning that. I'm not telling anybody to go out and do it. But that's one of the things I did. I climbed a tree. Now, that same, well, not necessarily that same tree, but a tree, when I said it could be my construction zone, man, I love building me some tree houses. Now, I'm not saying if you've turned on whatever channel Treehouse Builders is on and seen what he builds, no. I'm talking about go grab some random series of sticks, boards, whatever you can find. Make a platform up in a tree, and all of a sudden, hey, that was the best thing you'd ever dealt with. You loved it. Zero chance that it was safe, but you loved it. Now, I also said it was my entertainment. I'm going to tell you, you give me a tree on the side of a creek with a hole underneath it and a rope connected to a limb, I'll take that over a pool any day. And when I was a kid, we would search out holes and channels just so we could throw a rope up on the tree so we could swing out and dive off in that hole. Would spend hours at these creeks. Needless to say, I'm still in the same area that I grew up in. There are all sorts of dangers in those creeks that we swam in so much. All sorts of dangers in them creeks. But we had a blast in those things. We didn't need gaming consoles. We didn't need gaming chairs. We didn't need a lot of the stuff that's out here right now. We just needed what was right around us. What God give us. Right there it is. Here's your tree. Here's you some water. Figure it out. That's what we did. Had a great time doing it too. That same tree could also be a fuel source for us. Now, when I was a little kid, we had this wood burning heater in our house. Long before we switched over to natural gas, I go back to a store watching my brother one time. Man, he'd come in from school. He'd get that fire going. He put him some lighter fluid in there. He opened that little door, threw the match in there. I'm telling you, it looked like a jet engine firing off of some battleship. Kaboosh! Here it goes. Now I'm telling you, you don't know mistake until you smelt singeing hair. You realize at that moment, you did something wrong. But that tree, we could climb it, we could build in it, we could swim from it, we could cut a limb off of it, and we could make a fuel source. Now to get to that fuel source, guess what? I didn't have a log splitter. Didn't have one of them fancy pneumatic machines that you sit down there and you just take the chainsaw and you cut it and set it in. No. We carried ourselves right on out to that area wherever my dad had found a tree. I get it. Oak is a very good fuel source for burning. It burns really, really hot for those of you that's never had a fireplace and you just want to know why in the world oak will burn hot. So yes, we were going out there getting oak, hickory, whatever. I have no idea. None whatsoever. Why it always seemed like we had to go get firewood in the middle of summer. I could be wrong. Maybe my mind is just scarred, but it seems like we were 3 steps from the devil's doorstep when we were cutting firewood. Why could we do it in like late October, early November? I don't know, but we didn't. We'd do it in the heat of the summer. But we had cut that stuff. I can remember my dad taking a chainsaw. Well, he had an old Homelite chainsaw. I do believe it weighed close to a metric ton. But it did the job. But we'd get that chainsaw. Well, let me take that back. We didn't. Pop would get it. I was too small to lift that thing up. I was the kid that carried the wood. He'd get it stuck. He'd have to have another chainsaw. Cut a space out so he could get that chainsaw out. And here we go. Now our work wasn't over. We'd load it up into a wood wagon, right behind the tractor, haul it up to the house. And that log splitter I'm talking about that we didn't have, here, let me show you. A wedge. A splitting maul. And if you were lucky and the wood just wasn't quite green, I wasn't old enough to have the strength for it. You might just have to have just the plain old axe. This is it. Dad, if you've got sons out there and they're looking at this going, Daddy, what in Sam Hill is all that stuff? Yes, it's metal, kids. This was how we split wood. It's still done to this day. Amazing exercise. If you want your teenage son to be able to arm wrestle the biggest guy in his class, I promise you, put this stuff in his hands. He will take him down in probably a month or 2. But get you a split nut wood, shove this wedge in there, go to town. Get the next one, go to town some more, until eventually that wood had to submit to your will. And then you split it again. Now the thing is, this was teaching me something. Not only was it teaching me work ethic, but it was teaching me what family responsibility is. I saw it as a little kid as I'm burning slap up. Why am I out here? This is miserable. But as I got older, I realized I was doing my part as a little 6-year-old or whatever age I was to help provide for a family. I was. My dad was teaching me those things. I didn't know it. I didn't see it. At 42 years of age, I understand it now. That's just one aspect. What about this? I'm fixing to mention something that there's some of y'all watching is going to go, preach on, brother. Hauling hay. Now, back then, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, hauling hay taught me the principle of centrifugal force. Now, if anybody's trying to figure that one out, because I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but centrifugal force is just the process of some mass going around a center point, but as it speeds up, it's going to tip over. If you've hauled hay, you know what I'm talking about. You crept that trailer along and crept it along and crept it along. Because if you made a turn and you were going just a little too fast and you weren't paying attention to that slight dip that's in front of you, get ready. Centrifugal force was about to come into play, and that hay is coming off that trailer. Now, we didn't stack that hay 2 high or 3 high or 4 high. No. I got an uncle and a dad on a wagon that's probably stacked somewhere in the neighborhood 6, 7 high. And you're having to creep across this bumpy hayfield. And you got a dad that said, son, don't you let this fall off. I get it. But not only was I learning the process of centrifugal force, I was learning how to be cool under absolute panic. Because as you're driving down through there and you've got grown men on top of a haystack on a trailer that you're pulling, and they're trusting that your little 10-year-old, 11-year-old self is going to do this right, whew, that's some pressure. Some real pressure. But guess what? I learned how to drive by way of John Deere. Hauling hay. I also learned that not all dry grass weighs the same. For those of you that's done it before, you know what I'm talking about when I say, I could haul dry wheat straw hay all day long, but give me some of that Bermuda hay or junk hay, oh, good night. That was miserable. And my brother did more hay hauling than I did. I just did what we did back here for what we had in horses or mules, which wasn't much, but I still had to do it. There's so much stuff that I look at and go, oh my goodness, what goes on today? So now fast forward, sports. Now, when we played sports as a kid, I tell you, anybody's pasture, it didn't even have to be flat. We could turn any pasture into a sporting event. As long as we had the equipment to do it. We could play basketball anywhere, as long as we had a goal there. We could play football anywhere, as long as we had room to run. We could play baseball, as long as we could find the ball when we hit it. We didn't need a driveway. It didn't need a court. It didn't need to be air conditioned. It just needed to be available. But we could make it work. Now, I go through the things I just talked about. You know, up the top, talking about the tree. Today's kids, Fisher-Price. I put together some of them little plastic Fisher-Price things, and that's what kids had as clubhouses. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, man, I used to climb up in a tree. Oh, man. Now, it's much more safe. I will agree to that. But they got Fisher-Price. They didn't build any of it. It's just plastic. It's gone. Go over to hauling hay. What the kids got now? Elaborate four-wheelers decked out with these mud tires that's got lugs like that tall. And where do they put them? They put them in people's ponds. It blows my mind. The difference between what I was doing as a kid to what today's kids do, totally different. Now, if I go back to talk to my dad, what did he do as a child? There wasn't much entertainment. It was all work. They were still doing a little bit more on agriculture side. So, I mean, everything they did. They got up in the morning, it was dealing with livestock. If it was during the age of going to school, okay, they went to school, they come home. Depending on what time of year as to what they were going to be doing. If it's crop season, they get home, they're dealing with crop. If it's middle of winter, dealing with livestock. Everything was about work. Everything. Now, I say all that Not to say, if you haven't done these things or showed the next generation any of this stuff, you failed. No, that's not it. There's some of these things, even my son, he may have experienced. I will say he's never had to haul hay as far as square bales go. Now, he's dealt with doing round bales, but it's a totally different game. But I'm not saying we have to show everybody all these things. But what I do want to say is, what is your heritage? What is your legacy? What made you who you were? What things, when you were a kid, do you now, as you've gotten older, find yourself going, man, I miss those things? Or, man, I see what that did. I see how it helped make who I am. If you're telling yourself that, did you show the next generation? Did you show your son? Did you show your daughter? Did you show your nephew, your niece? Did you show somebody? The whole time I was putting this together, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how many things have we let slip by the next generation and we didn't show them? You know, I can remember when one of my uncles had passed away, and I've mentioned him in a previous episode. The things that he did with mules always fascinated me. And I can remember when he passed away, I thought to myself, my son never really watched my uncle work mules like I saw him do it. Now, my dad worked with mules too. But my son never got to see what it was like to take a horse or a mule and plow a garden. He never got to see what it's like to take one of those animals, hook them to a log, get it up a hill, get that log onto a trailer, take it to the sawmill. What it's like to go through that and not have some of the luxuries that we have today. It's great to have the luxuries that we have today. But man, this is important to understand what you came from. So the reason I say all this tonight, man, I want us to look back on who we are. What made us who we are? I'll be the first to say, there's some of you are going to look back on your past, and sometimes it hurts to look back on your past. Maybe there's things that went wrong in the past, and you don't want to look back there to see how it made you who you are. But I promise you, even in those instances, there are great things in there. Not to just rob the old adage of find the silver lining, but they're there. Even in hurt, there's still a triumph in there. What made you who you were? What are the things you find yourself doing now, or wanting to do now, or wish that you had carried on? Well, don't wait any longer. Go do them. If you want to build a tree house, stop. Take the time. Go build that tree house. Guess what? Let's say it's for your son. Not only is your son going to get a tree house, but maybe he's going to learn a little bit about construction. I'm willing to bet you, even your son stops and goes, man, I'll remember this for the rest of my life. He's not going to tell you that. I'm going to be the first to say that. But inside, I'm willing to bet you it's what he's thinking. Man, don't let the world consume us so much that we stop to realize that we are educators. We are trailblazers. We have a responsibility to show the next generation how it's done, because the generation before us did the same thing. Our world wants to consume our mind with so many things, and it tends to make us take our focus off of what's important and place it onto the world. Now, for those of you that watch any of these, you understand I like to put scripture in anything that I talk about. We are not to conform to this world. We are not. don't let the world do it. Look at your past. Look at your heritage. Look at your legacy. What is it going to be? Take that time, evaluate it, and ask yourself, can I do something about it? Am I satisfied with what I've done? Man, reflect on those things. Take the time to do it. I hope everybody really got something from this. I enjoy getting to do these. I enjoy getting to put these together. I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining me.